Welcome back. Let me get the Periscope started. Welcome back to all. We are going to be continuing in Isaiah, but this time we're in chapter 46. And this is a new thought. It's starting another scroll actually in Isaiah, and we're going to be going over that. Just a moment here. I'm just getting set the Periscope. Okay. All right. Let me make sure that the Pal Talk is working. Just a moment. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me in Pal Talk? Good. Okay. So let's get started. In the name of the Father and of His Son Yahweh Shah, in the name of the Father Yah, we will continue in this study by His Spirit and by His perfect righteousness. So, in chapter 46 of Isaiah, it starts another thought. It's dealing with, let's take a look at it just to start us off. It's Isaiah chapter 46. And we just finished chapter 45 dealing with the justification of a nation, the God of Jacob being the only hope of the earth, and the only hope, obviously, of Israel, this chosen people, the so-called Negroes, who are the true children of Israel. But Isaiah chapter 46 starts another thought. And let's begin it. I'm just going to read verse 1 just to give us the idea of the thought that's being started here. Isaiah chapter 46. I'm going to read verse 1. Bel boweth down, Nebo stoopeth. Their idols were upon the beast and upon the cattle. Your carriages were heavy loading. They are a burden to the weary beast. So he starts off talking about Bel and Nebo. Bel is the same as Baal. Baal is the same thing. It's the sun god of the Babylonians. Okay, it's the sun god of the Babylonians. And Nebo is not only is two things, it's a mountain in Moab, but it's also another Babylonian god. So we're talking, the subject here is Babylon. The subject is Babylon. Now, let's talk a little bit about Babylon, because Babylon, of course, is prominently mentioned in the book of Revelation. Now, initially, Babylon is the nation of Iraq, right? But Iraq is obviously not a world power at this time, nor will it be. But it was at one point the center of the most powerful government on the planet Earth. And so we go back to Genesis. We always go back to Genesis. It always ends up starting there in the beginning, right? Genesis, Bereshith, it always starts there. So just again, while we're here in Genesis 10, I want to just show you something. But before we do, let's start with Cush, the Hamitic people. So you have Shem, Ham, and Japheth, three different people from which geographically whole regions of people came from. Okay, so Shem is what we have now as Shemites, which the most prominent of the Shemites is the Israelite people, but Arabs are also Shemites. There's different sects of Arabs that come from Shem. Okay, but the chosen nation, the chosen people come from Shem, and that people is Israelites that come from the seed of Abraham. Okay, only them. Okay, so we talked about that. Then, of course, there's the Hamitic people from Ham, which we now recognize as the people that occupy originally, the original people that occupied the continent that we now call Africa. Okay, that's the Hamitic people. Then there's the Japhetic people that occupy the area of the earth that we call European. Okay, originally, we're going to talk about that too for a second. Okay, so out of these three, the whole world was populated. So your Europeans, Russians, Germanic tribes, all the way to China, that's Japhet. China, Japan, that's all based in Japhet. Lower than that in geographic scale, in terms of the southern part of it, going from parts of what we now call Africa, across what we now call the Middle East, into India and even Southeast Asia, you have Shemitic people. which are mostly your Arabs, and Israelites being the most prominent among them. Then, of course, the large continent of what we call Africa, now after the European man Africanus, which goes to show you where things have headed. But anyway, that original land was called Kush, and that land is what we call Hamitic people. They originated, or they went into there after the flood. Okay, so among the Hamitic people was a man named Nimrod, who was worshipped as a god and established an empire. Okay, and the empire was founded, and the place was called Babel, from which you get Babylon. So let's take a look at that. And this is Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10. And we're going to start at verse 6, the sons of Ham, which is the middle son. You have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So the sons of Ham, start in chapter 6. Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. These are the four sons of Ham. From these four, you have whole nations and multiple nations from these four sons. So you have, remember, these gentlemen coming off the ships, they were still living 200 and 300 and 400 years. They weren't living the 800 and 900 years that people have been living before the flood. Noah lived to be 950 years old. He was the last recorded man to live that long. After that, the lifespans started going down, but immediately his sons still lived to be 400 and 500 years old. So in 400 or 500 years, I've known cats that had 10 and 12 and 14 babies in their lifetime with different women. And these guys might have lived 50, 60 years. Imagine what a dude could do with 100 times more potency, which is what they probably have, maybe more, and he's living 400 and 500 years. How many children could he have? Okay, a lot. Okay, so now you're dealing with, that's why you had these nations. So now you got Cush, which is translated today in Ethiopia. But really, that whole continent that's called Africa was mostly Cush at that time, mostly Cush. Okay, it's been divided up by Europeans and then tribes and such, but it was mostly at that time, 4,000 years ago, you're talking about Cush. Okay, Mizraim is translated into Egypt. When you look up Egypt, you're going to see the word Mizraim, because that's where they came from. That was Cush's son, the second son, Mizraim. And he created Egypt, and then from him, Pathros and all that. That's where you got Put, that's Pathros, and northern part of Libya, Cyrene, and then Canaan, for what you got now, so-called Middle East, so-called. Okay, the Philistines, which are now Palestinians, same word, actually, Philistine and Palestine, same word. That whole land, Canaan, that's Canaan's land, okay? That was being taken from him. That's another story. Okay, so now you have the sons of Ham. Now, Cush begot, let's go read it from verse 8. Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before Yahweh. Wherefore it said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yahweh, he was exalted as a god. But before Yahweh means instead of, okay? He's a god instead of the Most High. He was a powerful brother, okay? Brother was Hamitic, all right? Now, his kingdom, notice that in the beginning of his kingdom, Nimrod had a kingdom, a world kingdom. All right. And it says the kingdom, beginning of his kingdom was Babel, which you get Babylon. That's the original. Iraq, Akkad, Calneh, in the midst of the land of Shinar. That's over there where Iraq is now. Okay. Out of that land went forth Ashur and builded Nineveh. He went forth and got Ashur. Ashur was actually a Semite, but he took that over. And then he builded Nineveh, and the city was Rehoboth and Calah. And then Rezin, and then between Nineveh and Calah, the same as a great city. Okay, so now this is all Nimrod's people, and he had a kingdom. His kingdom encompassed lands that were Shemites and Hamites. Okay, encompassed all of that. Now let's go down to chapter 11, talking about Nimrod and his kingdom. And in verse 1, chapter 11, and the whole earth was of one language and one speech. One language, one speech, whole earth. It's going to be back there like that again when we get to the kingdom. When Messiah returns, he's going to return unto us, the Bible says, a pure language. That's in the book of Zephaniah, chapter 3. He's going to return unto us a pure language. But at this time, they did have a pure language, one speech. They all come off Noah's boat. They spoke the same language. Okay? The whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, and they found a plain in the land of Shinar. This is significant because Shinar was where who? Nimrod's kingdom was. Shinar. So we're talking about Nimrod's kingdom in the land of Shinar. All right. And they dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. Then said they, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. Okay, so now Nimrod decided to make his kingdom a name. What does that mean? That means to name it? No, they had a name, physical name, but that means they would be the gods. They would be the capital city of the planet. They would build this to the heaven to defy the Most High. Okay, Babylon. Okay, and they got it. And he said, go to, let's make brick. Okay, let's go to verse 5. And Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men built. And Yahweh said, behold, the people has become one. They have all one language. And this they begin to do. Now, nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Well, remember when he used the word imagine, remember what he told Noah before the flood. For the imagination of the thoughts of men were only evil continually. And at that time, the earth was filled with violence. So here, under Nimrod's kingdom, there was going to be returning to that. Go to verse 7. Let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahweh scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore, the name of this is called Babel, because Yahweh did there confound the language of all the earth. And from thence did Yahweh scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. So Nimrod's kingdom started at Babel. When you get Babylon, he had the whole world under one language. They were all agreed to worship him and his tower and his statue and his kingdom. But Yah put an end to that with just changing their language. Okay, but that was the model which came later under Nebuchadnezzar when he had his kingdom, if you recall, Babylon, being a descendant of Nimrod. Nebuchadnezzar was a descendant of Nimrod because they both were Babylon. Okay, Hamitic, which tells you that Nimrod was a black man and his kingdom was ruled by a black man. Now we understand that in terms of it being Babylon. Let's go to Daniel. Let's go to Daniel chapter 2. We talked about this a little bit last night, but this is now Daniel 2. Daniel shows the statue, okay, to Nimrod, the statue he dreamt about. Remember, he showed Nimrod what he dreamt. He showed him what his thoughts were even before he fell asleep. Then go ahead and show him what he dreamt and then interpreted by the grace and power of the Most High. So notice what he said about it then. Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse. I'm going to start at verse 26. I'm going to start at verse 26 and go down to verse 36 for starters. 26 to 36. Talking about Babylon, okay? This is where Daniel is when Nebuchadnezzar asks about this dream. Nebuchadnezzar is the king of Babylon, which started off as Babel, the capital city of Nimrod's kingdom, the Hamitic period, Nimrod, okay? Who came from Cush. The king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, art thou able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, the secret which the king hath demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But there is a Most High in heaven, which revealeth secrets and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, which should come to pass, what should come to pass hereafter. And he that revealeth secrets maketh known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known in the interpretation to the king, that thou mightest know the thoughts of thy heart. So for two reasons, he wants the king to know who the Most High is, and number two is for the people that's going to live in the latter days. That's us. Okay, this is what this dream was for. It was for us. Okay, thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This image, this great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee. The form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his bellies and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest to that a stone was cut without hands, which smote the image upon his feet, that they were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. So now Nebuchadnezzar obviously is bugging. I mean, he's tripping right now because now this man is giving him exactly what he dreamt. He's not only doing that, he told him what his thoughts were before he went to sleep. Now he's tripping, and obviously he got full attention on Daniel right now. So now Daniel getting ready to give him the banger right here. Not just telling what he dreamed. It's time for the interpretation. So let's go. Daniel chapter 2, verse 37. From verse 37 down to verse 38. Okay, we're talking about Babylon. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven has given thee a kingdom, power, and strength and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the air of the heaven, hath he given into thy hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. Thou art this head of gold. So Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom of Babylon is the head of gold. In a sense, it is the standard for heathen kingdoms on the earth. Head of gold. He's a heathen kingdom. It is the standard for heathen kingdoms forever going forward. Every heathen wants to have a Babylonian kingdom like Nebuchadnezzar had, or even like Nimrod had, where everybody speaks your language, understands your speech, and follows your orders. Does that sound familiar today? Is there a nation that demands that all other nations speak their language, follow their orders? Is there a nation like that today? And demands that everybody worships their God? Let's continue. So you have the King of Kings, Babylon. So all heathen want their nation to be like that. And that's where we come to the future. So you had in the past Nimrod, then Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel spoke about that. And then he told Nebuchadnezzar they're going to be inferior kingdoms to you. There was a kingdom of silver, which was inferior to gold. That's the Medo-Persian Empire. There was a kingdom of brass, which is inferior to gold and silver in terms of value. That was the Greek Empire. But brass is harder than those two. Those two are softer, but more valuable. But brass is harder. Then came the hardest one of all, the Romans, the iron, breaking pieces and bruised. Brothers and sisters, I'm just trying to be honest and open with you. Truth is the truth. The Caucasian man from the European tribes of Japhet, he runs this earth right now. He does. But what we need to understand about him, that the Caucasian man from Europe, the sons of Japhet, Gog and Magog, is the most violent and ruthless group of people that ever walked this earth. That's why they're iron. They break in pieces and bruise. They rob and take. And you Caucasians might be offended, but if I can admit that I'm the true Israelite and my people are in captivity to you because we worship other gods, and that's why all this happened to us, you should be able to admit what I just said is true, because it is. Over the last 2,000 years, the iron has ruled. And it is the most violent and oppressive people that ever walked this earth. That's why, for us as Israelites in the modern era, it is fruitless for us to look to these